I would really like to bring into the conversation now another panelist, someone that I also call my older brother and dearly respect in every sense around that as well. I'd like to invite Dr. Nabeeh Hassan. He's the co-director of the Cloud of Muslim Speakers Bureau, which is an affiliate of the Islamic Networks Group. He is active in speaking and facilitating interfaith efforts, youth development, and training speakers. Nabeeh is also a biomedical researcher at National Jewish Health, specializing in genomics of infectious lung diseases. I also know that you've been contributing to a lot of the research that has been going on around COVID-19 and how our communities need to continuously be safe. So thank you for your work in that regard as well. Through speaking about Islam, health, and science, Nabeeh has given hundreds of presentations to primary schools, universities, churches, hospitals, and professional societies. He currently lives in Denver, Colorado, and take it away, Nabeeh. I would really love to hear some of your thoughts and reflections on all that's been going
on. Thank you for the very generous introduction, Sister Nadine. Thank you, fellow panelists, for joining us this evening, and thank you, Mosaic, for really kind of stepping up and trying to engage in a very difficult conversation in some tumultuous times. When I think about kind of what's going on in the chronology of events that happened, I've got to give the context that, as a Muslim, I was in Ramadan. I was steeped in the most bizarre circumstance of our lifetimes, where we're fasting in complete isolation, afraid of each other. And then this story comes about with Brother Ahmed being chased down while jogging and, minding his own business by two unarmed police officers, as Tamara mentioned. Then we have the other death where the woman was killed in her apartment. And then Mr. Floyd was murdered in front of a crowd of individuals with 4 police officers involved with his death. And I think about responsibility. With responsibility that's been given to leadership, you are held to a higher standard. Each officer who carries a badge, who gets a gun to serve and protect us, carries an immense amount of responsibility, and thus they're held to a higher standard. For individuals who couldn't have the moral fortitude to talk to their colleague and say, hey, this is too much, they gotta go. When we have institutions that insulate that kind of abjugation of responsibility and leadership, that's got to go. We can't have systems in place that allow people to be bystanders and not have the moral fortitude to do what's right. I think about the responsibility of this nation that brought millions of people against their will to this country, kept them here, stripped them of their very essence, their language, their culture, their faith. There's a responsibility that goes with that. There is a debt that's been garnered, and there's a debt to be paid. That's responsibility. When we have presidents, when we have mayors, when we have leaders who want to bring us into a kumbaya situation, there's a failure of leadership to recognize the very history that you guys have mentioned before. I think back to Detroit, where my parents met, my dad's from, and I think about one of the most horrific racial riots in our country's history, the racial riots of 1967, in which Detroit burned. People don't understand now because Detroit is the butt of jokes, but Detroit was arguably the greatest city in the world in that time. And the racial, tumultuous uncertainty of the 60s made the white community in Detroit very scared. And the very same civil unrest was going on, except the National Guard and military were called in, and the city burned, people were shot. And I say, our leadership not learn anything? Are we still repeating the same old things from the 60s? Are we still facing the same problems from 50 and 60 years ago? You know, as Sister Nadine mentioned, I'm a geneticist. This is in our DNA. And until we face this disease, this original sin of America, of genocide and racism, we are continuously going to keep repeating these cycles. So I'm stuck on responsibility, but I'm also wanting it, as many of you have mentioned, wanting that responsibility to transition to aspiration. Let's develop actual tangible plans. Let's develop an agenda to move forward and make systemic institutional changes. I know many of our critics will say you had affirmative action that didn't work. Okay, we failed, but that doesn't mean that we stopped trying. There's clearly an ailment in our country. And if we don't fix it, the world is watching and they are as sure as the night comes after the day that we are going to tear each other apart. And there won't be a United States left. So we've got to fix this. And there's no time like the present. Let's not let these deaths happen in vain. Let's come together. Let's call on our allies. Let's call in every chip that we have. Let's set an agenda and let's push forward.
Thank you, and Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Hassan.